watching the UFC before. It was the fucking craziest knockout I've ever seen.
Is this on ESPN?
Yeah,
What, men's or women's?
men's. It was like he threw a kick, the dude like caught his kick, and then he did like a spinning karate kick to the head, and the dude just fucking dropped. They
Okay.
said it's like the knockout of the century.
Oh, Jesus. Not sure I'll see a clip of it.
Good evening, fellas, and welcome to another episode of The Tripod, where we break down every NRL game every week from a betting perspective. This week we'll be looking back through the Cracker Week 2 finals matches and just had the one best bet on the round, and we do cash it, so we go 1-0 and continue our good form throughout the finals. Jacob, how you doing, buddy?
To be honest, mate, I don't know if I can keep doing this. It's not just the pride that I lose when I keep losing side bets, but most important, we won our best bet.
Correct.
And we said it before the round. It's really hard to find value because everyone is scouring these games trying to find, great value. And if there's a 60% winner sitting there in a 50-50 market, someone else will bet it first. We found you guys a best bet winner, but I was on the wrong side of the two games. But I will say, from a positive perspective, we've now seen 6 finals games. I feel like in every single game, there was a point where pretty much each of the two sides looked like they could win. And even the Roosters, who fell down 16-0, and we'll talk about that right now, when they did get back to 16-12 with 20 to go, you absolutely would have given them, at least a 50-50 chance.
At least.
But all credit to the Raiders. That is just a fierce unit with a super strong belief. They freshened up before the finals, and they got it done for you. But you can spell out the side bets ledger as well if you want, and take a little victory lap.
I'll take a little bit of a victory lap. Let's talk about the first game that you just mentioned, Jacob. As you said, it was the Raiders beating the Roosters 22 points to 18. Our best bet was on under 7.5 tries, and that cashes with only 7 tries in the game. We were kind of tossing up that or under 42.5, and either way, you kind of won that one. And yes,
the only game of the finals to go under.
Yeah,
Out of 6.
yeah.
We were lucky because that's the only game.
And you're
we've bet
right,
under.
because it's been like there's rarely a finals where you get the first 6 games that are all like pretty much uber competitive, fun games, and we've had that throughout. So we are kind of lucky, especially when you look at what's happening in the NFL this year. But yes, I took some money off you in this one, Jacob. I did like the Raiders. Obviously, you liked the Roosters, and like you said, the Roosters had chances to win that one, and they wouldn't have just been pick'em, I think, when the game was tight. They would have been favourite at that point, I would have assumed, in like live betting or whatever.
Well, they never quite tied it up.
Oh,
they got
that's
back within
right.
4,
They did within
but,
2.
But they had their chances. They were knocking on the door.
Yeah, you're right. And you mentioned in the preview pod the Roosters' defense has just been absolutely stout, and I kind of said, with these uber good defenses like the Storm and the Roosters, it's tough to kind of go around them. You got to shoot up the middle, and that's exactly what they did for the first try. Papali, I saw a few blokes in the group had Papali for the first try straight up the middle, and look, and the Roosters' defense didn't help. I think that exact very play where Papali scored was that when Kiri goes off for a bit for the HIA check, and then it was it's a funny one because I mentioned in the preview pod it was a brutal game that Roosters team that the Roosters played against the Panthers last week. Now, would they be a little bit fatigued in this one? And I wouldn't say that it was fatigue because the second half they were almost the stronger side, but they did come out a little bit flat and some uncharacteristic stuff from the Roosters. It seemed like they did panic a little bit when they were down. They got a 6 again call, I think midway through the first half there. And they're flinging it around like crazy on second tackle. And then, they give it away. And then the Roosters from absolutely nothing score their second try. And that was a joke of a try. I mean, you look at what happened there. I mean, you watched it as well. But Papali offload to Bateman. And then, to CNK, to Rapana, to George Williams. This Raiders team is stacked with playmakers. And what else I'll say is I've been on the bandwagon all season long. But can we give CNK his props? The dude is one of the most underrated fullbacks in the comp. Another 200-metre game, multiple try-saving tackles, including that huge one on Morris in the last 10 minutes. But mad props to the Raiders, and Roosters get bounced, 3 straight losses, from here. But this Raiders side, I'll just say, massive props to them. When they had Hodgson go down early in the season, everyone was writing them off. What I will say, and I mentioned it with the Roosters, brutal game against the Panthers last week. This game was fucking brutal. And you saw the Raiders, they were walking wounded by the end of that game. So, keep your ear to the ground because they're going to come out of that one either with some injuries or with some really fatigued guys.
Yeah, I'll circle back to the Raiders because they deserve all the praise. They deserved that win. But let's talk about the Roosters. I think the word you used is right, uncharacteristic. Like letting a prop like Papali barge over for a try. That's a
Doesn't
regular
happen.
season try that we see crappy teams let in. And the Tapane try as well, where he shrugs people
Oh,
off. Now,
crazy.
albeit one of the players he pushed off him was Kiri, who,
True.
may still have been in a daze. But that's not a type of try that the Roosters have let in ever in games that they need. And in attack, you're right. Like there's that moment where they get the ball, where it gets spilled by the Raiders, and it's a walk in for Tupou, but he's 10 meters
Yeah.
behind the play. Multiple other times where they put together their sweeping backline plays, the ball went to ground. It just didn't look sharp. It didn't look crisp. And whether it goes back to a point you've made, they've lost continuity this year because they've had to always shuffle the team. Like it's been Robinson managing, I guess energy levels and fatigue management of his players
Yeah.
and injuries and key position injuries, but you lose that continuity that they just weren't crisp. Clearly, in saying all that, from 16-0 down, when they get that try before half-time, they knew because of the Panthers game, they had the belief they could come back. I think when they get to 16-12, it's anybody's game with 20 minutes to go, the amount of fatigue that was in the match, and it ends up being decided really by a bizarre moment, that
Crazy.
kick in behind by
Yeah.
Williams, and it just seems like Teddy, who was battling, he was labouring a bit in that game.
Wasn't
He
right.
couldn't. The guy who's arguably the most agile player in the NRL couldn't change direction when he needed to most. And you need a slice of luck. The Raiders got that, but you talk about the Raiders. So Charnsey, I think 4 players were phenomenal. And Charns, 276 meters, 81 post contact, which
Amazing.
was best of all players. 2 try savers, one on Brett, one on Josh Morris. And I do think the one on Josh Morris, I mean, that's going to be 16 all and with a conversion for the Roosters. I think, they could definitely, with the momentum, if that would have been their third try, win, if not even cover. And I have to stand by my best bet, my bet that I made against you, which I took -6 with the Roosters. And I think they got a bad start. They could never quite recover, and they were a little off their game. But I bet against a ruthless Raiders side that came in to do a job. But was it a high shot? I think it was. I think he dragged Josh Morris down by the neck and jaw. But hey, I'm not going to make excuses. Whiten, the battle of the Sixers, he stepped up again. He's an absolute superstar. Now, again, Kiri, very unfortunate to cop that knock, while trying to stop a try on Papali. What a brutal moment in the game for the Roosters that was, even though Kiri came back. And it was always going to be a battle of the middles. The Roosters have Takeaho, who got hurt, Warrior Hargraves, but the 2 best middles was Josh Papali and the other middle who scored a try, Tapane. They had 16 tackle breaks between them. Now, it was a brutal game. I picked the Roosters. I was wrong. But even though I picked the Roosters, I could probably have said that arguably the Raiders have a better chance to beat the Storm this week than the Roosters would have because the Raiders are fresher. Like, they took round 20 off. They got an easier week 1 game.
Yep.
Whereas the Roosters, if they would have won this, I don't know what they would have had in the tank.
Road.
I feel like the Roosters would be coming up to Queensland to lose by 20 this week, potentially, if they jagged
we were
that.
saying, like, if the Roosters end up three-peating this year, that is the longest way around the mountain you could possibly go,
Yeah, and hey, like, hats off to them because they went down, they get carried out on their shield. They went down swinging against the Panthers, lose that one as we know, lose this by 4. Pretty gallant. They had a few things go against them. I know that they'll feel they could have been better, but they weren't. But look to the Raiders, absolutely deserving to be in a prelim. And they're definitely, they play a style of footy that can win in the finals. It won't be easy for the Storm, especially we don't know for sure if they're going to have their star 5'8" available either.
Yeah, and at this point, it looks like they'll be without him for next week. Let's move on to the Saturday game. It's the Rabbits beating the Eels 38 points to 24. Once again, no best bets on this game, but I take a little bit more money off of Jacob, and you would have been cheering, mate. I mean, we should talk about the pre-game line movement as well, obviously, because when we made the bet, the line was 6. The Rabbits were 6-point favourites, and then Fergo gets ruled out, which was I guess a lot of people kind of thought that was a 50-50, maybe even less than a 50-50 chance that he would play. And then Jennings gets ruled out, and the line goes to 10.5, I saw in some places. Now, that's a pretty crazy line move when you consider that that's, 2 wingers that are getting ruled out for a 4.5-point line move across, a number of key numbers there. But I think it was just the whole ordeal. Like, it's just like everyone jumped on the Rabbits, and they thought, the Eels are going to be in turmoil with all this, and the line just kept growing and growing. And, arguably, we didn't talk right before the game, Jacob, but at 10.5, can I ask you, that at that point, even with all the news going around, you must have thought the 10.5 was value.
Yeah, it would have been. And even on Wednesday, I said I just can't play the Rabbitohs. They're too public at this point. They'd scored 100, over 100 in their previous two matches, right? Like against the Roosters and the Knights. But I wasn't lobbying for a best bet on the Eels because I knew there was blowout potential. And this was, at that point, probably knowing, you said two wingers, but I mean, it was Sevo, it was most likely Fergo, and he ended up being out, and then Jennings.
But Sevo was out before the line move.
Yeah, I bet you straight up and took the Eels at $3 because I felt like they're a bit of a hot and cold where if it comes together for them, they could give themselves a chance. And if it doesn't, then it could get ugly. We've seen what the Rabbitohs can do. But I think, when the line, and remember, the line was 4.5 on Monday, Tuesday, and people knew Sevo was out, which is quite crazy. I mean, in retrospect, you would have loved to just lay 4.5 with the Rabbitohs. Right. But obviously, the line moving 6 points from that is not saying Sevo, Fergo, and Jennings is worth 6, but it was just the ultimate disruption. You had to really question losing one of your veterans in your backline that's already depleted on game day to something completely unexpected. Like that, obviously, that was all baked into the line. And I'll circle right back to that at the end of how brutal that ends up being as a loss for anyone who took the Parramatta line on, Friday or Saturday. But I felt that the Eels had one main advantage in this game they had to use, which was their middle forwards. I mean, they did, you recruited Reagan Campbell-Gillard, and not that Madison's a middle forward, but another key forward there. And Nathan Brown didn't start the season, but he's very important to this team. And the guy who was actually the best forward on the field was Junior Paulo. He was immense. Putting his hand up for Origin, he has to be considered. Now, obviously, as we know, they're down 8-0, and you're thinking they're going to smoke them. I know everyone was probably on bunnies. I know everyone had Alex Johnson in their same-game multis, because how could you not envision him getting a try on the left wing when you've seen what they've done? Right. Then the Eels score 18 straight points, and I felt like the Eels could score points. I just didn't feel the Eels could stop the Bunnies. So it was all about who could control possession in this game. For them to score 18 straight, lead 18-10, and hold that lead, hold by the skin of their teeth right at the end of half-time, you had to believe they're a big chance to win. I certainly did. I mean, I actually had a future bet placed months ago that was going to pay, it was a multi, but paying $10,000 if the Eels made the grand final. So I was like, hey, it could be one game from it. But I knew that it was by no means was it safe. But I will say the key moment where we have to talk about, of course, they're down 18 to 20. They've the Souths have come out and scored 2 tries in the second half. But they're on the attack. They get a repeat set. They get a super quick play the ball with Paulo. Now, I think it was a professional foul by Cook. I think it was extremely savvy. He knew they were in all sorts, and he went for more and pushed Paulo down again. And then he immediately tried to debate like he'd done nothing wrong to plant the seed that it wouldn't be worth a sin bin. Now, I think that if he doesn't do that, I really believe the Eels would have scored a try that set and been back up by 4 points. Instead, it's a penalty which kills their momentum, and I was very disappointed they chose to take the 2.
You have to, though.
There's a good argument to tie it up 20 to go, right? But I felt like that's what the Rabbitohs want, lets them off the hook. As we know, Moses, who was perfect from the sideline all night, hits the post from virtually in front. The Rabbitohs are first to the
10
ball.
out of 10 times.
Then they make a break. They get all the way to the Eels line. The Eels recover, hold them out for 5 tackles, but then the Rabbitohs score on a deflected dribbling grubber in behind on 5th tackle. That's a kick in the gut. So that's basically an 8-point swing. 5 minutes later, spinning the ball, Dylan Brown throws an intercept to Jackson Paulo, and it's an intercept try. So there's 14 points that was handed, or a swing of 14 points. That ultimately was the game.
Oh, that was 100% the game. And you made all the points that I was going to make. One thing I will say, maybe there's something to it with these new rules. I know I mentioned last week that I've never seen so many back-to-back tries, try and then, another try off the kickoff. And here, like you said, Jacob, we saw it on 3 consecutive sets for the Eels. And I'm not sure if it's anything to do with the new rules, the 6 agains, teams getting fatigued earlier. But what I will say, and I mentioned this about the Eels, they played. Now, after this week, they've played 3 legit teams. And they in the Panthers, the Storm, and the Rabbits. All 3 times, they have, gotten up to an early lead and come out all guns blazing, 100% in the first half, and then visibly deteriorate in the second half. And that's exactly what happened in this one. And I thought maybe it added to the fact, because how many 6 agains were there in the first 10 to 15 minutes of this game? And I think that certainly adds some fatigue to both teams. And this Eels side, just faded. And what I will say, I think a lot of people are going to look at this game and say, obviously the Eels were unlucky to not cover this one, especially when you're down 2, you get a pen, and it's going to be 20 all, and it's going to be a field goal shootout. You're definitely covering your 6.5 or your 10.5 or whatever. I'm going to make the argument that the Rabbits deserve to cover, and if anything, it probably shouldn't have been that close, because getting 3 back-to-back tries is very rare in the NRL, and I think, that apart from that 5-minute stretch where they scored 3 tries, the Rabbits were the better team for this one. So I think that the right team won. For next week, once again, should be an absolute cracker. And to be honest, we've said it all year that it's like, once this Rabbits team gets some confidence and they start to click, they're going to be really hard to beat. And everyone's pretty healthy as well in that team, obviously, apart from Latrell Mitchell. But everyone's looking healthy in that team, and they've got the confidence. And like you said, they're just fucking scoring points at will at the moment. So another 2 really good finals games to look forward to next week.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The team that won last night gives us the more competitive prelim.
100%.
And when you've watched the Rabbitohs play the last few weeks, you think they're going to score every set. I have a feeling when they play Penrith next week, you won't feel quite like that. This will be the ultimate test, because they have played some sides that were a bit questionable defensively.
Correct.
The Rabbitohs. You were spot on with your observation, though. You've pointed this out for the last couple of weeks of the Eels kind of running out of juice, just being flat in the second half. They conceded 5 tries. But I just want to talk about the very end of the game as well. Just that brutal ending if you were on the Eels line, or maybe you were on Rabbitohs 1-12 or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, so I mentioned a 14-point swing. I'm talking about missed penalty shot, try at the end of that set, and then an intercept try 5 minutes later. The Eels were only down 8 with about 3 or 4 minutes to go. Yeah. Moses kicks for himself on like his own 40, and then gets to it and kicks again. Damien Cook gathers the ball in his own half. So, yeah, maybe there's a couple minutes to go. And then burns around the outside and skins everybody and brings it round near the post as well and scores a try, with 90 seconds to go. And that now means that the Rabbitohs end up winning by 14.
Yeah.
So if you had plus 8.5, plus 10 or anything.
The funny thing is, if they're up by 6, he probably just takes the tackle and they play a super conservative set. But because they're up by 8,
Because you wouldn't want to risk trying to beat someone on the outside, get ankle tap, go into touch and hand possession or whatever. So, I mean, that's actually a bad beat, I think, if you had the Eels plus the points. That was 100%. Tough. But something else that was really telling in the press conference, Wayne Bennett, and he actually openly said some teams flogged their players for fitness during the COVID break, and they made a point not to, and they literally said, our goal was to play our best footy at the end of the year, which we've said all year in the pod. A lot of people have doubted the Bunnies. We've said this team is building. You can see glimpses. Like, what about that night on a Thursday night footy where they were down about 16 or 18-0 to the Dragons, and they came back? Like, there was glimpses. This has not been a total surprise. We've seen them building. Yes, we've questioned, like, they've lost Latrell. You couldn't have predicted how good they'd still be. But we have respected this team, and he said we learnt from 2019 about peaking too early. Don't forget, last year, the Rabbitohs were like top 2 most of the year and ultimately fell short, lost in a prelim. And I actually think that he actually said maybe the Eels are what the Rabbitohs were last year. The Eels gangbusters for the first 10 rounds of this season and fell away. And that's actually the same story with our side bets. I was on fire for the first half of the year. Maybe I got overconfident. You were just building and getting better each week. And now, it's scary to bet against you.
I was just biding my time. And, you're right, though, because in a funky season like this, and we've said this so many times before, it's like the healthiest teams the healthiest teams win in the finals, and you have to be healthy. And it's like, the Rabbits game, Eels, missed 3 dudes. And I'm not saying it's because they burnt their players out or anything, but I think there is something to it where, like, if a team busts us all off season, muscles get more fatigued and you're more likely to get injured. I think there is something to that for sure.
So, mate, we've capped 2 great footy games. We're going to obviously not give too much away in terms of what we think of the prelims. Yep. Tune in on Wednesday. Now, daylight savings is upon us for our brothers in the southern states. We're up in sunny Queensland. So we still do it at 6 p.m. our time. That is now 7 p.m. for you guys on Wednesday night. We're going to preview the 2 prelims, which will be crackers. And as you guys know, we're 83% in our finals best bets. We just want to talk a little bit of US sports. NBA Finals is into Game 6 tomorrow, and it's been quite fascinating from a punting and just a fan perspective. And even a little bit of NFL. We've been doing NFL pods. Those are on Saturday morning, so you guys can catch that yesterday. So this is for people who are listening now who care about NFL or NBA. If you don't, feel free to
turn it off
out.
now if you don't care about it.
Let me just set the stage for NBA. I just want to recap the 6 games so far because it's been quite amazing from punting. All right, Lakers come in. LeBron James and Anthony Davis, best 2 players, left in the series. Although we'll talk about the form of Jimmy Butler.
Will say something
Lakers
about that,
were $1.15 to win the title, right? They win game 1 by 18, and the Heat's second and third best players both got injured, Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic.
Arguably best player.
At that point, the series is over. People are betting sweep or, betting Lakers series handicap -2.5 so they can win 4-0 or 4-1. I think Sportsbet had already done an early pad on the Lakers.
Yeah,
the line is double digits for game 2. What happens in game 2? Lakers comfortably winning. The Heat scores a basket with 2 seconds left and lose by 10. And if you did lay 10.5 with the Lakers, you lost. So the Heat covers pretty flukily right on the buzzer of game 2. Game 3, the Heat still without their second and third best players have an outright upset. They beat the Lakers. No one saw that coming. I hope no one had Heat 1-10 because, again, the Heat scores a late basket win by 11.
Yeah.
Game 4, Bam Adebayo is back in the lineup, but the Lakers are too good. The line was 7.5 because Bam was back. Lakers are up 9 with 5 seconds to go, and the Heat makes a meaningless 3. That's now 3 in a row the Heat have covered, the team that was written off. Lakers win by 6, and that line was 6.5, 7.5. So that 3, decides who covers. Game 5, okay, Lakers are going to clinch the championship here. This was yesterday. But Miami blows a double-digit fourth-quarter lead. You think now the Lakers are going to win it. But no, Miami holds on. Jimmy Butler, I said to you, is doing a Kawhi Leonard impersonation. He's doing everything for this team, and he's so clutch. And it's 3-2. Miami has covered 4 straight games, and Anthony Davis is looking hobbled as well. So we've got game 6 tomorrow, and this is very, very interesting.
Just from a fan's perspective, and I've got no skin in the game here. As we know, I had 20 grand riding on the Celtics to win the East. That doesn't happen, and I've been complaining to you that why couldn't this Heat team get injured during the Celtics series? But I was watching that game yesterday, and what an epic game, what an epic performance by Jimmy Butler. He's gone to another level, and honestly, some people will say why can't he be like that all the time? But shit's fucking fatiguing if you've got to put the team on your back the entire time. But he has gone to another level, and just watching that game, just from a fan's perspective, you always kind of want more games, and for me, anyway, I'm definitely cheering for Miami in this one. I just think this Lakers team has some people that I fucking hate on there, like Dwight Howard. But, I was watching, and you're right, AD was visibly hobbled, and, every single game throughout the entire finals, LeBron and AD have always been on the injury report every single time. And I think it's just some bullshit that the Lakers are pulling. And obviously, every single time, they've been fine, but yeah, he tweaked his ankle again. He was hobbling for, pretty much most of that fourth quarter. And I was just thinking, if the Lakers hold on and win here, it'll be so disappointing because then, series over. And now we get game 6 and possibly game 7 with a hobbled AD. And, this series is back on, honestly. LeBron can do so much. And I know Dragic is, I don't think he's going to be playing ready for game 6. But, you look back and think, it's 3-2 now. You missed, like you said, you missed Bam, you missed Dragic, and people would argue that Bam's been, the Heat's best player throughout the regular season anyway.
He absolutely was the previous series. Yeah. He led them in points, rebounds, and assists when they beat the Celtics.
Yes.
And you're right, if AD can't go, I think this Lakers team is better than anybody else when LeBron and AD play as well as they can. But if AD is struggling, not rebounding, not doing his amazing athletic and skillful plays,
you're relying on Dwight and JaVale McGee.
LeBron will do his thing. But you're right, they're relying on role players. Yesterday, no real role players stepped up. I think KCP, might add 15 points, but he took about 16 shots. So LeBron did not get enough help, and it was pretty much epitomized by that final play where he drove into the paint, sucked 4 people in, threw a wide open shot to Danny Green. And even in the press conference, LeBron mentioned that, hey, we had a wide open look. And LeBron's famous for sometimes kind
He's
of
been
scorning
coughing
his
it all
teammates.
season. He's been coughing it all playoffs, Danny Green. He's just been
But
shooting
I
brick
don't
after
want
brick.
to be over dramatic, but there's legacy at stake here. I mean, LeBron has made the finals, I
100%.
think, 9 times. I think this is
Correct.
his 10th.
Yep.
Don't fact check me, but roughly.
No, you're right.
But
You're right.
he's come up against some phenomenal teams that he basically almost had no chance to beat. If you go all the way back, his first finals was against the '07 Spurs. LeBron had nobody and got swept. He couldn't have really won that. Now, 2011 finals, they could have beaten the Mavs, but that was like a team of destiny Mavs team that beat them. 2013 and 14, that Spurs team was unreal, and the Heat did win one of those rings thanks to that Ray Allen shot in Game 6 that they pulled out of the fire,
Offensive
and they win in
board.
7. And then the 2015, 16, 17, 18 Warriors.
Yeah.
And he jags a ring, as we know, in 2016 there. But especially 2017 and 18 with Kevin Durant, that was an unbeatable team. So it's totally unfair, the people that poke holes in LeBron's finals record, because it's an amazing accomplishment that he gets there every year. But if his team blows this one, as I said, they started the series as $1.15 before Miami lost their second and third best players. And if they blow and a 3-1 lead, that's honestly could really hurt like how people look, like be a stain on his career. So I mean, it's still in their hands, but it's way too close for comfort for them, and that's on tomorrow. Share any other final thoughts on NBA, but also NFL tomorrow.
It would be horrific if he loses this one. Like, just imagine, like, to go inside LeBron's head for just 2 seconds. They had like the Blazers team in round 1 that like was awesome throughout the bubble, but really like, you had a hobbled deal out at the end, and Portland didn't play that well in that one. They've had a very cruisy run to the finals, and honestly, I think the Bucks didn't get there, and honestly, I think they would have been lesser favorites against the Celtics. So they've had the dream run, really.
Clippers was meant to be their big foe. They never had to face them.
He's probably thinking, this is fucking great. This is the easiest ring I'm ever going to get. And obviously, that's not how LeBron thinks. This is probably how everyone else thinks. Like, and the funny thing is, like, they roll through that. They win that game. People will probably, put a little asterisk next to it and say, well, you didn't have to go through the Clippers. You had an easy run. It didn't mean as much. So if he loses this one in what's like the unlosable fucking ring, then yes, that's legacy tarnished for sure, because there's already people that, like, other LeBron haters, that they'll have, like, mad ammunition till he retires if they lose this series.
And it's not fair, because he has been he's 35 years old. He's been doing this for like 18 straight seasons at this level. It's actually ridiculous, and we are very fortunate to see an athlete of this caliber do the things he does. And I actually want him to win, even though there's guys on this.
Do you?
And I've always been conditioned to hate the Lakers, because I've always been like cheering on a Western Conference team that always got beat by the Lakers, and even going back to Kobe, R.I.P., but I always used to hate him, hate him and his teams. But I just have so much respect for LeBron. As much as I love the drama, I'm glad we got a Game 6 tomorrow. I kind of want him to get the win. What about NFL? We got that tomorrow as well. I think we've got about 3 or 4 best bets in play. Yeah, 3 games, and we've got a double best bet, double barrel on Houston tomorrow.
Indeed.
We should say, the season itself is in quite a bit of strife. There's been multiple games either postponed or delayed with COVID outbreaks. What do you expect? There's 53 on a roster plus all the staff. They're not in any bubbles. But yes, they've got a lot of protocol at their training facilities, but these players still have families and friends and everything like that. It's a recipe for disaster if you see what's going on in the States. But meanwhile, we have won 14 of 19 best bets. That's 74%. We hit a 16-1 same game multi-banger on Monday. So we are carving up in the NFL, even though, every week is more uncertain than the last.
It really is. And, I know they'll point to, the NBA, who did a great job, and it's not sort of fair to compare it to the NRL, because obviously Australia's COVID cases are not nearly as bad as America. But you're right, yes, the NBA did a great job. They had everyone in the bubble. They had barely any cases in there. But it's just impossible. Not that it's impossible, but it's just way harder. Like you said, not only 53-man roster, they got the practice squad. There's over freaking hundreds of people, over 100 people that, are in the team, directly and indirectly. So you would have to have a gigantic bubble to make that work. And I understand you could probably have 5 or 6 around the country or something like that, but it still makes it really, really tough. And now I think I got some notifications this morning, even more teams training guys, a trainer on the Chiefs and stuff has now tested positive. So enjoy it while you can, because the NFL is, they say, the hardest sport to make money on. We're 14-5, which is ridiculous, and yeah, got to enjoy it while we can, because honestly, it's not looking great to get to 16 games this year.
No, it's a bit scary, and I feel like they were not proactive. This hit,
No, they weren't.
COVID was like not barely on our radar in February. They had their Super Bowl. Then everyone was really concerned in March. It threw a spanner into the works of NBA and MLB and ice hockey. And the NFL was sitting pretty, we're in our off season. We're not even coming back for training camp till July. This will blow over. They didn't do any planning. So now it's a logistical nightmare. Like you're saying, could you get 5 or 6 teams into one area and play a round robin and get fixtures out that way in a controlled environment? But like,
you
that's
needed
not
to sort this earlier,
can
though.
be planned. Yeah, and now games are getting delayed, but then you don't have like spare weeks on the schedule. Yes, teams have buys, but you might not have a buy the same week as the team. You got to catch up a game. So
exactly.
And it's just no telling how many more games are going to get postponed. And I know in MLB they just said, well, if you don't play the game, you don't play it, and we'll just judge everyone on win percentage at the end of the year. But I feel like that could be totally unfair, and there'd be a lot of money that would be lost. Not to mention people who are listening to us right now also play fantasy football as we do. Like, it's quite crazy because you're trying to pick players who are going to have big performances on any given week, and then their game could be postponed. And then how does that affect like fantasy? Not that that's like big in the scheme of human life, but like it's a massive spanner in the works.
It's so tough to do that from the win percentage point of view, because like MLB, I think they shortened the season to 60 something games. So like you miss a couple games here and there, and it's not going to affect your percentage massively. But when you have a 16 game season, like you miss 4 games, the quarter of the season, it could affect it massively. So I think that would be an impossible one to do. But you're right, it's a fucking shit show with fantasy. Half my roster is either injured or missing games for Corona. But it is crazy. We should talk quickly, Jacob, about we've given out one futures best bet. You gave out the Chiefs at the start of the season at $8.50, I believe, to win the Super Bowl. They're now down to $4.50. So obviously 4-0 and still looking great. How confident are you in the Chiefs? What would you say is the biggest not rival, but biggest threat there?
Well, I think that they've answered their biggest threat, because in round 3 they played the team that was the biggest competition in the AFC, which was the Ravens, and they played them on the road and they got that win. And actually the playoff seeding has been restructured this year. An extra team gets in, so you might think, well, that means making the playoffs. You're one of 7 in each side instead of one of 6. But there's a greater advantage to finishing first in the conference. You're the only team that gets the bye. And we talk about that in NRL, and NFL is as physical, if not more. And that bye is so important also from strategy. And Kansas City is theirs to kind of control now. They're going to have a tough schedule. When you win your division, you always face like a first place schedule. But they've won the game they really needed. Now, I mean, who else is a threat in the AFC? I think Smokey, you probably have to say Buffalo Bills, who are also undefeated. And those 2 teams are set to meet in the next week or 2. I think they were meant to meet upcoming Thursday night football, but it won't happen because the Bills game's been delayed. So, hey,
would you put the Bills as a bigger threat than the Pats?
Yeah, then the Pats. Yep. Yeah, I don't think the Pats are as great this year. I think their defense is not the same as it was last year. I still wouldn't write off the Ravens, of course, even though Chiefs seem to always handle them. So that's a fun one. Look, it's rare that you get future value, but I just was quite shocked that your Super Bowl champions with a quarterback who, I'm not trying to be exaggerate too much, but may go down as the greatest ever. Just with how he's doing things that nobody's ever done, and they're in a 2.5 season sample size. And he's so fun to watch. And we got him at 850. And so far, so good. So that's good fun, as is cheering on all our best bets. One more thought on the shit show that is the NFL. Congrats to the NBA because they got through.
Yes.
The title might get decided tomorrow. They've done really well to put it on. Congrats to the NRL as well.
Yeah.
We're lucky.
Oh, yeah.
We're lucky we're the situation we're in Australia. We're lucky we got through an awesome season. And we had one game delayed by 24 hours. That was about it in the whole year. So the NRL's done a phenomenal job. I mean, we're nearly there. We've got 3 more games to enjoy for that. Hope you guys didn't mind a little bit of US sports chat. Something else, if you love that, Netty Given Sunday, check out that. That should be out by about 3 p.m. Or actually, that will already have probably posted before we post this. So you'll find it on the Tripod page. And we'll see you guys Wednesday.
And also our NFL preview. We've posted that on the Tripod page as well. You find it on the Tripod YouTube channel as well. I'll be at that game next weekend at Suncorp, Jacob, so should be an
beauty
cracker. Yeah, should be good.
Nice one.
Thanks once again, guys, for tuning in. Good luck on your bets, and we will see you guys Wednesday night to break down the preliminary finals. See you then.
Lego.